All right, welcome back to another special broadcast of The Unknown. My name is Michael Volpe. I'm in Chicago. That's in Cook County, Illinois, and I write at michaelvolpe.substack.com. My broadcast partner, Richard Luthmann, somewhere near Fort Myers in Lee County, Florida. And you write at Luthmann, Luthmann.substack.com. And we're here with Bailey Templeton. And Bailey, you are running for the 94th district of the Illinois House. How many
Yes, sir.
districts is how many how many districts do we have?
I
A
couldn't
lot,
tell
a
you.
lot.
It changes so often, I couldn't tell you.
All right. All right. We're going to get into a lot of stuff, but I wanted to get something up on the screen first. Um, you've been in the news, I guess, lately, and I wanted to ask you about this. And so you found through a FOIA that I don't know, there's missing children, and it's called DCFS, the Department of Children and Family Services, which is the equivalent of Child Protective Services in Illinois. So, what did you find, and why is this all over the news all of a sudden?
Well, I submitted a couple requests back in June about certain questions concerning missing children in care, as well as the finances towards children in care through federal and state funding.
Mhm.
And we're going to be releasing more and more of those as we go, but specifically on the missing child FOIA, we had a trend of like one to two, maybe three children missing between 2017 until 2023. In 2023, according to the FOIAs that I received from DCFS FOIA officer himself, 16 kids went missing. 16 kids in 12 months, not as unheard of as 2024, where there was 166 children reported missing.
So, it went from approximately three a year to 166.
Yeah, I would say, well, I've got the documents right here. From 2017 to 2018, one child was missing. From
Mhm.
2019 to 2023 children. 2021 had seven children. 2022 went back down to two. So I don't know if we located some children or if two additionally went missing that year. We haven't gotten any further responses to elaborate. 2023 was the 16, and 2024, 166 children went missing.
Okay. So, I think I'm getting it right. So, basically,
Right.
from a handful, and this is the is it this is the FOIA that you got back?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think I've got it right. So from a handful of children missing to 166, but I think if I've been following the news stories, they can't explain where they are or why that number ballooned so astronomically. Am I right?
I think considering the news stories that have been out so far in my conversations with the editor that I've been speaking with, they're not even giving numbers. In fact, they've told him that the numbers that I received weren't even accurate. I asked for these numbers
Wait,
back in June.
who did you receive the
Right.
numbers from?
DCFS FOIA officer. I've
So
got the
they're
paper
saying
trail of everything. Right.
our own FOIA officer gave you bad numbers. Is that what they're trying to say?
I think so, and I've asked for further numbers, and also other news sources have asked for the numbers as well, and they're not receiving anything. In fact, they were told that they hadn't corresponded with me. I have
Okay.
proof of everything, and so it seems that they're just either going to cook the books or
Mhm.
something very nefarious is happening within the system because they
Uh,
are not releasing the numbers to the press that they gave me.
okay. And DCFS has had a lot of problems. I can't remember the boy who died, but it was 4 or 5 years ago. I think Adam was his first name. He died. They've got news stories where kids are sleeping in their offices because they're overrun. They many of their heads have resigned. They've got
Right.
all kinds of problems at different times following court orders. There's a lot of problems with DCFS, and we want to talk about all of that. But before we do, the 94th district, for people who don't know, and I'm sure that's most people, where is that? What people do you want to represent?
Oh, well, we're in a very gerrymandered district, so we have all or part of multiple different counties, and I'll just list them off. If you know anybody in those areas, send them my way. I would love to meet them and get to know them and see what I can do to help them as well. We've got Adams County, Fulton County, Hancock, Henderson, Knox, Mason, Mercer, Madonna, Peoria, Rock Island, Schuyler, Tazewell, and Henry. as well as Warren. So we've got quite a very long list of counties that I'd love to represent, just as not a politician, as a parent who's very concerned, as a researcher, as a homeschooling mom, who can promise you that I can get down to the bottom of any situation just by asking the right questions. And I've been proving that. I'm receiving information they won't even give to the press.
Okay, and
So if you guys allowed me to represent you, I would do it very humbly.
all right, I
Holy
think
cow, that is a gerrymandered district.
right, and I
It's
think you
Holy,
can
bad.
see, yeah, it looks
holy
like what is
cow.
that? That's like an L kind of. Okay,
It's really
all right,
bad. It's a 4-hour drive from top to bottom.
all right. And I'm obviously not the only district that's gerrymandered. Now you can say a lot. You strategically don't want to say a lot, but your introduction to Department of Child and Family Services was with your own children. So what can you say? Why do you not want to say more and expand as much as you want on that?
All I can say is that in 2024, my child was diagnosed with cancer, and I wanted a second opinion, and we were denied the right to a second opinion. Child
All right.
Protective Services got involved, and we have a pending federal lawsuit about what happened within that time frame.
All right. In the federal lawsuit, you can speak, but you believe that if you do, it could hurt your federal lawsuit.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and DCFS, is it? Why are you running? Is the way?
Specifically,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Specifically, the reason that I've decided to run for office is I've made a couple trips to Washington, D.C. I've spoke with congressmen up there, as well as members of the DOJ Civil Rights Department, specifically on children in foster care being institutionalized and held in hospitals for longer periods than they were supposed to. Right now, there's a federal lawsuit that was submitted in 2023 about that happening here in Illinois. So I had a lot I could speak on about that with things that I'd read. I asked our own representatives in my area for help when things were happening to my family that were completely unconstitutional, abhorrent, and things beyond your wildest dreams happened to my family. And we made it through that. And I asked for help where we should have, and we didn't receive the help. Specifically, our representative currently sitting right now, Noreen Hammond. I had worked closely with her office manager. Right.
Mhm.
I'd worked very closely with her office manager, updating them throughout the entire situation. Nothing was ever done, and I never got to personally speak with Noreen. With the weight of the situation that happened in my family, if I was in her position, I would have shown up for that family and asked questions. I would have done anything in my power or even submitted bills to make sure it couldn't happen again. But on the contrary, she's been co-sponsoring bills that will enable it to happen again by granting Illinois DCFS immunity with HB 3138. We can't be having that. So at this point, I feel very forced to stand up to do what I need to do to prevent this from happening again in my district.
Okay, and I'm going to get the bill up. All right, Rich, I'm sure you've got a few questions, but this is HB House Bill 3138. As you can see, you're right. It gives them immunity from lawsuit. I don't know how strong the immunity is, but obviously stronger than it is now. And probably would at least make it more difficult, if not impossible, for you to sue. Am I right?
Not specifically just me, but there's already 2 federal lawsuits sitting in the docket right now. One of them just started pretrial conference, and this was of a hospital in Illinois, OSF Peoria, falsifying medical documents and altering medical documents to have a family of 3 boys removed from their family by DCFS for a year.
Okay.
If they are doing such egregious things like what they've done to my family, that family, and others that I've heard from, there's no way this agency needs immunity. That is dangerous. That is something we all should be absolutely upset about. This is bipartisan. These are our children. No agency should have that type of immunity when it comes to our children's lives and our well-being.
Rich, you have a few questions?
Has it been ruled out by DCFS that the disappearance of these children is related to child sex trafficking?
They won't speak on anything about it.
So they won't give answers specifically about child sex trafficking, and no one, including Representative Hammond, has been asking for answers about this large number of children that has disappeared in the system and concerns about child sex trafficking.
I don't think anybody has raised that concern. The only definitions they give me are unknown whereabouts and abducted and no contact. So we do have 22 children who were abducted last year in foster care, in Illinois care, 22 confirmed. I also want to go back and just speculate. If they said the numbers that they gave me aren't accurate, I can take that one of two ways, that they're going to say the numbers are actually lower, or the protocol is that the foster parent should then report to the caseworker, who then reports it up a chain of command. Bringing up child sex trafficking, if these foster parents, who we've proven multiple times through Illinois stories alone that some foster parents are malicious and evil, I'm not saying that all of them are. I believe that there's amazing foster homes out there. But I myself was a foster child, and I was in one good home. One. So I know the weight of the system, but if these foster parents are not reporting these children as missing, the numbers are very skewed. There's a lot into this that you just can't, nobody's asking these questions.
This is just heinous. The numbers are just heinous in my
Absolutely.
opinion. So let's see. So stay on this DCFS issue because I think it's the most important thing right now. The Auditor General found that there were widespread documentation gaps on the missing youth notifications. You want to run for to be a representative. What would you do to have greater accountability? What are the steps that you would take? What would you put into the law as opposed to giving immunity to bad actors? What would you do to be able to detect the bad actors? Absolutely,
demanding third-party audits, maybe some job shadowing opportunities where people need to go in and watch how it's been released that interns are doing these investigations, taking children from homes when they're not even properly trained to do so. There needs to be so much oversight. These are our children. And also, one thing I've tried to do at a federal level is to change the definition of neglect. If we change the amount of children who are getting pulled into this system due to reasons like poverty or medical decision disagreements, or an upset ex that calls on you to the CPS. This is something that's very common when you talk to people. This is things that happen all the time, intentional false reporting and things like that. If we work on lowering the number of children that get removed, redirecting those funds to actually helping the child. At this moment, there is no incentive for family reunification, but there is a lot of financial incentive to adopt children to new homes. So what we would do, or what my idea would be, to go in there and kind of force them to change their policies with some laws, maybe reallocation of funds, to make sure that we work on family preservation more than we work on family separation.
Okay, and what does your first bill, if you're elected, to protect the kids in care, what does it look like? And do you have any idea what the price tag would be?
I don't think it would be a price tag unless hands are in the wrong pockets, to be honest with you. Texas is working on a bill right now, and it's the childhood cancer bill. Basically, it states that the Department of Children and Family Services cannot get involved with a child's cancer care. That is up to the parent and the child. It is not up to a state agency to intervene in situations like that. I would like to adopt something like that here, or tackling the redefinition of neglect. We take out poverty. We take out medical decisions. We go after the real neglect on children. If the child doesn't have heat or food or what it needs in the home, we have paid more than enough money to redirect those funds to make sure they have what they need. That doesn't mean the parent doesn't love them. That means that we have a broken system and a broken economy that we need to fix.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to me a little bit about education. I know that unions are very strong in Illinois, and you homeschool, and that's not something that the unions like. Do you expect to have backlash with your candidacy? And what about the homeschool oversight and reporting? What about that system? Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Sure. That's actually one of my favorite subjects. I did allow my children to be in in public school for quite some time, maybe a year and a half. But to me, I felt this pull from my child that I felt in my heart that we're supposed to be with our kids during that time. Plus, Illinois has kind of this warped interpretation of what the teachers should be teaching the children and what the parents should be teaching the children. So I pulled my kids out and I started homeschooling them with a faith-based curriculum. Now, I don't expect everybody else to do that. I don't want to impose that on anybody else. That's my personal choice. And that's the way that I see any type of schooling. It is up to the parents of the child to decide how that child is schooled, including homeschool, including public school, and what is taught in those public schools. I think we're paying for that. Once again, anything that public funds are paying for, we have the say in it. And it shouldn't be a statewide mandate if certain districts don't want to participate in some of the mandates or policies that they've put out for the Department of Education.
Okay, talk to me. I'm not an Illinois person, but I did read up about the Illinois 2023 anti-book ban law, HB 2789. What are your views on that? Keep, change, repeal? What do you want to do with that?
I would have to read through it more thoroughly just to see the text of it, because, you know, the media can tell you this is what the bill's about, but it could have more things in it. So I couldn't really give a definitive answer on that. But I do think book banning is inappropriate either way. But I do think there needs to be age limits for certain books that go into this public schools, like anything with sexual content. I don't believe it should be at any level of a school library or accessible to children in any way, shape, or form. But I think the idea of banning books in general is dangerous, because once it's allowed, who decides which books go? We have history books that are very important that we need to be able to access.
Okay. Mike, you got a couple questions?
Yeah, I don't know, I can't remember the term you used, but you said the curriculum in the public school was bad. Well, what were some of the classes that you were personally turned off by, or lessons that your kids were being taught?
I didn't have to experience any of those type of lessons because my children left the school system by first grade at the oldest. But I have talked to other parents about things that happen, like primarily just the sex ed in general. I think that it's being introduced way too soon to the children. I understand.
When did you hear it was? When did you hear? When did you hear it was going to be introduced? What grades were they teaching it at?
Well, our district, when I say district, I'm referencing the school district at this point. Our local school districts, they opt out of all of that. And we watch that very carefully, and we put out like the materials to let them know how to opt out when they can. But I think it's outside of my district lines. That's more of a problem. So I haven't heard that from people in my district, but just reading like the news and seeing the things that are happening, there are some serious issues in the Department of Education and in the public school systems right now. My main issue would be, are the children safe when and in my town, there is a situation where there's a child's been very violent or made threats, and the school board seems to just dismiss it and not do anything about it. That's more of my concern with how the direction schooling's going, less of the curriculum, more of the public, I don't know, the way that children are being raised is just not aligning with my morals, I suppose.
Okay. And are there any bills that you can introduce that would make it easier to homeschool?
Oh, we would just definitely make sure that 2128 doesn't pass, or 2827, excuse me.
Which is what?
That is the homeschool reporting bill, as well as DCFS also plays into this homeschooling thing, because in that 2827, it speaks of some oversight agency that's going to make sure the child is reporting, or the parents reporting how they need to. My assumption would be that the oversight agency would be Illinois DCFS.
Right.
So if the parent's not reporting exactly what the school district wants them to report, then you've got an educational neglect call, which at this moment, educational neglect is not a legal standing in Illinois. With 2827, that would open doors to educational neglect for homeschooling parents.
So I've been in contact from time to time with the Texas Homeschooling Coalition. I think that's what they call themselves. And they believe that homeschooling parents get targeted, but I think it's CPS in Texas. Do you think social services especially targets homeschooling parents?
I would say that I had that issue. I would say also that during my court proceedings, that it was a big issue for members of DCFS staff that my children were homeschooled in the aspect of, we can't follow them anymore.
Okay. And do you think you can win just focusing on homeschooling and DCFS, or do you have to broaden your issues out to try to reach more people? And so what are the other issues you want to talk about?
I think medical freedom is super important to me as well. I've been endorsed by Stand for Health Freedom, based on my belief that everyone should have informed consent about every medical decision that they make. And nobody can make those decisions except for yourself or your parent if you're a minor. So I think making sure that we don't have a lot of overreach by the government or the medical field is super important to me as well. And the more I talk to people about Medicaid, that's a huge thing that I would like to work on reforming. There's so much immense fraud and waste going on within this system. I've pulled out Medicaid FOIAs as well for DCFS, and I'll tell you, $188 million was spent last year alone.
On what?
Just on foster children.
I have a question. Do you support childhood immunization requirements? Why or why not?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In my opinion, that needs to be up to a parent, and it needs to be up to the parent and the doctor. We shouldn't have a requirement like that because there are children, whether it is rare adverse reactions, there are children with adverse reactions. And just because they want to participate in the public school system doesn't mean they need to be subjected to even that first vaccine that could cause them such a poor reaction that they're never the same child again. And that's being proven in study after study that things are happening with certain vaccines. There was no placebo. Stand for Health Freedom right now is suing the CDC over their childhood vaccines never being studied against a blind placebo.
Okay.
Let me challenge you.
How about the issue? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
All right, so let me challenge you on two things you said. So the other side would say if you're putting kids in public school, they have a duty to be vaccinated because you can, if all these unvaccinated kids are going to be all together, you're going to spread all of this stuff. And a lot of these vaccines have been around for 100 years, 50 years, and the diseases that they treat have gone to near zero. And you know the other side, you're not really seeing an adverse reaction. So how do you respond to that? That if what you want goes into effect, you're going to put like 100 unvaccinated kids in the same area, and then all of a sudden now we're back to smallpox and a whole bunch of other things that we thought we had eradicated.
Right. I would challenge the idea that parents who don't vaccinate put their children in public school in the first place, or the statistics on that, on how many unvaccinated children are homeschooled. As well as the fact of a vaccine is to protect your body from that illness. So if that started some type of reaction, that would be not a very good vaccine, I suppose. The science just doesn't line up with the allegations that are being made about the medical field and about the vaccine mandates with children. The science that they actually have been proving, it doesn't line up. Most of those diseases, we saw a huge decrease in the death rate and the infection rate before the vaccine was even introduced. There's a lot that was just not given on mainstream media that people haven't been able to digest yet. But I do read both sides of everything. I don't just choose based on feelings. I choose based on facts. So I do a lot of research on many different aspects. DCFS happens to be my biggest thing that I'm working for, like against right now. But that's because it's probably the worst state agency that Illinois has, and nobody talks about it. I mean, you might have one little article here and there, but it's so much fraud, waste, and abuse, and children are being hurt at the hands of it. If I don't win based off of children, that's fine. I will still continue to do what I'm doing to help the children.
So I have a question about your district. It's a rural district. Do you have a plan for stabilization of the rural hospitals and EMS care?
I think, once again, the biggest step that we could do is checking into those funds, seeing where they're going, and reallocating where it's supposed to be. I think
do you perceive a problem right now with access to care?
I know that a lot of hospitals have been closing. A lot of small hospitals have been closing, and they've all been selling out to certain privatized hospitals that have chains of hospitals in the area. It seems that you have to be a big hospital or you can't get the funding that you need.
And is that cause service issues to people who would be your constituents, to your neighbors and friends?
I would believe so, just as well as the Medicaid and how they're having so much issues getting their medications or their medication prices. I think that there's a bureaucracy involved in about every different aspect of Illinois government and Illinois agencies. And I think that a huge audit is what we need to be demanding. Is we need to have a third party audit, maybe whether it's federal government comes in and looks at some of these numbers or whether we do it internally. We need an audit. The amount of tax hikes that we've had just do not make sense for the care that our people are receiving.
I think what I'm hearing you say is Illinois Dolge, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. An inside job.
All right. So I wanted to ask you, the cancer, what was that? That's in Texas where DCFS can't get involved in cancer care. The other side is, I think, definitely not in all cases, but Steve Jobs died because he thought he could take care of his cancers through this new age stuff. And I think if he had treated it traditionally, he might still be alive. And he believed that at the end of his life. What proponents of DCFS getting involved would say, you're getting these parents who think like blood enemas and stuff that doesn't work is going to treat their child. So we have to grab them so they can be treated with the thing that can actually save them. So how is that wrong?
I would argue that the thing that could save them is not proven to save them. It's in fact proven to kill most patients. Chemotherapy and radiation could kill a healthy person. And if a parent wants to look into other options, as we're reallocating funds in the federal government to different cancer researches, which is something I promote very highly, is that we send our money to cancer research programs that aren't the big named cancer research programs who have had years and years to figure out the cause and figure out how to cure this without hurting so many children, and giving people mustard gas as a cure. It's not even known as a cure. This is not called a cure for cancer when you do chemotherapy and radiation. It's treatment. Maybe there is a cure out there and we just need to reallocate funds once again to find these cures instead of the medication given for my son's cancer specifically is from the 40s. Mm-hmm. Why do we not have any safer alternatives? And out of all the children with that same diagnosis as my son, he's the only one that's still alive.
All right. So you think you doing enough research was what
I did a lot of research, and I think that mothers who are faced with the same thing do a lot of research themselves. And I think that we are so backed into a corner and we get told that the things that we're reading that are proven are not going to work, even if we present them with medical studies that say that they will.
All right. I wanted to show you, this is a real piece of paperwork. I know because I received it, that DCFS gives to the parent they are investigating. And it states in part, you can refuse to be interviewed. However, if you refuse, your refusal could affect the outcome of the investigation and could be used against you. Emphasis mine. So there is no right to remain silent when DCFS is involved. Is that something you would favor changing on the state level? Do you think that a parent has a right to remain silent just like somebody accused of a crime?
Absolutely. So I've been working with the Family Forward Project, and I've been up to Washington, D.C. with them a few times. Connie Reguli, she has written a bill for advocates to be allowed in the courtroom, advocates to be allowed when you're interviewed by DCFS, or it's actually a federal bill. So that would be across all the states, but the states have to enact it, and it gives the power to the states to choose who those advocates will be. Like I said in the beginning, I feel like if we have some way to stop the removal before the removal happens, to either allocate funds to the family where they need it or have someone who explains to the parent who in that moment is traumatized. This system has most families afraid when they show up. They're supposed to be conducting services and helping families, but instead when you get a knock on your door, you're afraid.
Right.
That's a horrible stigma that they've gotten.
Right. I was more angry, but I did a lot of these stories, and when they announced themselves, I was still unprepared.
Right.
And I had a lot of practice. I was angry. I didn't handle myself correctly in the beginning. I eventually figured it out, but I was very upset that I was I did speak to DCFS, and I partially because of what they said in that letter, but I don't think a parent should be required to make their case for them.
Right. I
You
think
know,
that due process should be demanded at every level. You stand to lose more in a DCFS case than you could ever stand to lose in a court case with criminal charges.
I believe that whatever criminal defendants those rights, like a speedy trial, a right to an attorney, that should actually
Right.
apply in almost every case. I don't think you in a child custody case should be forced to represent yourself. And I also don't think I don't think if you're sued for $100 million, why should you be forced to represent yourself? And the same thing with a speedy trial. These custody cases last like 5, 6 years because there's no demand for a speedy trial. So I would change all of that. But personally, as far as DCFS is concerned, tell me what you think. I think it should just be eliminated. I think that if there's a crime committed, that is what police is for. There's a show some may have heard, Law and Order, SVU. It's been around for a couple of years.
Right.
Most police departments have a special victims unit, but even if they don't, if someone's accused of molestation, of starving their child, of beating their child, those are crimes, and that's what police is for. If it's not a crime, like if they're accused of letting the child go out barefoot in 40-degree weather, I don't think that's for the government to be involved. I'm not saying they should do that, or if the house is too messy. If it's so messy it's a crime, let the cops investigate. Besides that, I think it complicates the system. You don't know when police should be involved, when DCFS should be involved. And then if there's a child custody case, you don't know when anything is supposed to, who's got the lead in anything. In my opinion, the best solution is just to eliminate DCFS. Would you agree with that?
I'd have to say no, only because there are some really dangerous parents out there in really dangerous situations for kids. Yes, the police should handle it, but with the missing children, the police are almost at the top of that chain of command too. So there's some complicity here or a lot of lack of oversight. I think that the first demand that I would have within DCFS is an audit. We need to see where this money is going. They get so much money. How are they not doing it right? Audit advocates, that's how I do it. I would say that as a foster kid growing up in the system myself, there are some really good people in there. And I'm not attacking DCFS as a whole. I'm attacking the way that the system hurt my family and the way that I know the system can hurt other loving families. And the fact that it seems like an incentivized bureaucracy that's kind of, I don't want to bring politics into it, but it seems to be attacking one side more than the other, especially if you're a Christian, especially if you're a homeschooler. It's a dangerous territory to be a free thinker in the state of Illinois. So I wouldn't say abolish it completely because nobody would do that. There's no way they would do that. But what we can do is figure out the money and figure out who needs to have it.
I said this to a couple of other state legislators in the last part. No, there's no way it's probably not feasible to put a bill that gets through the legislature and is signed by the governor that would get rid of it.
Right.
Yeah,
but
I agree with you.
Right. We could push audit.
Right. Rich, any other questions?
So we talked about rights just now and criminal justice. So I have a criminal justice question for you. Where do you stand on Illinois' no cash bail, that system under the Safety Act? Would you keep it? Would you change it? Or would you repeal it?
I think it's extremely dangerous. I would once again have to read the entire bill. It's easy to go off of what the summary is, but I would like to read the entire bill before I give a deep synopsis on how I feel about it. But it's very dangerous to have cashless bail because it doesn't matter what crime you committed, you're right back out to do it again. And that would go also for pedophiles and sex offenders and people who are hurting children. Right. We have an overflux of people here in the state who have charges against them and have been walking out on the street and living next to schools. And there's just things that need to be changed and there needs to be oversight demanded. I think that cashless bail is not a good start for that.
Okay. In 2023, Illinois had the assault weapons ban. Do you support that? Should you keep it? Should it change it? Should it be repealed?
I am the Illinois state organizer for You Are the Power. which is a constitutional nonprofit that enforces the Constitution on local levels, shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed.
I,
That's
Bailey,
how I feel about anything.
I got another. Can you define what an assault weapon is?
Anything. It could be an assault
Right.
weapon. I could pick up an
Isn't it
assault
just
rock in a minute.
right? Isn't it a scary
I've got an
looking?
assault cell phone.
Right. It's a scary looking gun is what an assault weapon is. And so you have to define it. And then, these gun makers are smart. If you say like eight bullets or more, then they'll just make a bunch that are 7 bullets.
Right.
They'll get right on, they're
Right. I
reading
think
the regulation just like you are. They'll just, shift towards something that's right there. And I don't know if it changes anything.
I think all gun laws are unconstitutional. I think that law-abiding citizens follow laws, not bad guys.
Well,
What about the endorsement affidavit system that you have in Illinois? You have an endorsement affidavit registry for firearms. Do you think that should be repealed too?
Are we talking about the FOIA card system?
Yeah, you have. Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shall not be infringed.
right. All right.
Point blank period. Shall
Let's
not be
talk-
infringed.
But I gotta ask you about ICE. Do you support what they're doing? They're going into different neighborhoods. Is there any law you would try to pass to either help or hurt them?
I can't condone the actions of each person in an agency. Like I said, there's good and there's bad people. So there may be some horrendous acts being carried out in the midst of ICE raids. There may be bad things happening. But what I do support is finding the pedophiles and child traffickers who came into our state and getting them out of our state. And I know that a lot of them came from the southern border.
Right.
So I think that it's a necessary way to take care of business. But I also think that the children who are being harmed or potentially not being put into a safe home, who also may be put into DCFS care at that point, I think that's dangerous. I think that there needs to be a lot of things looked at, but getting the pedophiles and the child traffickers off the streets doesn't bother me so much.
Rich, any other questions?
we talked a bunch about auditing and cutting state programs. Is there any state program you would expand, and why?
Let me think more about that and get back to you, because I've just been a lot about the auditing and how I can fix it. I've never thought of
You're my kind of fiscal conservative. You want to cut. You're not so much on expanding. Am I right? My last question, Governor Pritzker, you like him? You don't like him? If he's coming up in 2026, you'll be on the same ballot. Would you vote for him? Is there any way you would vote for him? Are you voting for him no matter what? Where are you at?
Governor Pritzker is culpable for 166 missing kids from Illinois DCFS care, and he's silent. Pritzker should have been impeached a long time ago. He is not for the people. I 100% do not support JB Pritzker.
Rich, any
he's
last
a tyrant.
questions?
He's an evil tyrant, in my opinion.
Do you favor the current Illinois state abortion protections, and what limits would you propose?
I think that abortion is a really, really touchy topic for a lot of people. I think that people say only women should decide and the government shouldn't be involved. I think that it would be very specific reasonings why abortion should be allowed. And with those reasonings, I think that charges should be pressed in the case of rape. In the case of incest, there should be charges pressed with that allowed abortion, because that's hard for somebody to do, especially for a child who is made pregnant by an abuser. I don't believe that it's their duty to have to carry that. But I also believe that everything in those decisions are between that person and God, and that I do not stand for abortions full term. I do not stand for abortions after the date of you knowing that that child's a boy or girl or even a heartbeat. But I do believe that it is not the government's position to get involved in someone's decision making. I think every child deserves to be born, but I do understand when people say, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? I understand. I think that if there's going to be laws put in play, that there should be charges pressed for situations of rape. I think we can't just have that being a claim without somebody being in trouble for the crime that was committed. And a lot of abortions also, right now, if abortions are due to rape, if charges aren't pressed against that person, that gives them another opportunity to do it to somebody else, and more lives get affected. So that's a really touchy topic. I don't think that I would be introducing any bills per se myself on that topic. Voting on it would be a different thing.
Okay. All right. All right. So Bailey, I got one last question, and then Rich has one last question. So both of us have followed in 2 states, and hopefully there'll be in more states. In Arizona, they call it the Ad Hoc Joint Legislative Committee on Family Court Orders. And in Idaho, I think they call it the Idaho Child Custody and Domestic Relations Task Force. And they're special committees formed of both the state house, the state senate, to examine family court. They hold anywhere from 6 to 10 hearings, and then in both states, I think they want to do something like a white paper. But the most important part is to actually propose legislation that's based on the evidence that they've seen. Is that something you'd favor in Illinois?
Yeah, I think that would be a good start. I think that including members of the public who have been inflicted in a wrongful way by the system would be good for those type of task force. An outside look still doesn't give you the feeling of being a parent that goes through this system. So if we were to have some type of task force or overlook, I think that parents involved with the system should have some say in what's happened to or what does happen. So listening to your constituents, whether you're in the Senate or in the House of Representatives, when they come to you with issues about a state agency, help them or listen to them and find a way to put in bills to protect them. And if we can't do that, I think the only way we could do that is with a task force or an obligation where they have to.
Rich, your last question?
So in a state like Illinois, that's a Democrat supermajority state, where can you seek your wins? You want to do a bunch of stuff. What areas do you think are good areas for you?
Our district is 80-20 Republican. So it's primarily Republican here in this district. But the way that I'm just going to help the district, I'm going to keep doing the job that I've been doing all along, which is looking into audits, questioning state agencies. I've been doing this for almost a year now, just asking questions to find out more and giving back to the community. So my manager and my kids and I are going to be at a soup dinner on Friday. We're going to be serving everyone in the community. And that's what I think truly is the job of a representative, is to represent the people.
Now, but when you go to Springfield, you got to
Right.
do some work, right? And you're going to have to work with the Democrats on
Right.
the other side. Do you think family court is one of those areas that is a good area to try to get a broad bipartisan coalition?
Yeah, I do. Just based off my experiences going to Washington, D.C., we didn't just visit Republicans. We visited all offices and spoke to as many people as we could. Our children are bipartisan. And I think just having a conversation, just bringing up the conversation, which is rarely spoken about in Illinois legislature. They don't speak about DCFS that often. And when they do, it's not a good bill that they're putting forward. I think just opening up the door for that conversation with the Democrats, Republicans alike, a lot of people are going to resonate with what it's like to be a parent and to be faced with the government telling a parent what a parent can and cannot do with their child.
I got one last question. I think the governor
Sure.
picks the head of DCFS in Illinois. So it's a state agency. It's part of the repertoire of the state level. Why do you think they don't have many conversations about it in the legislature?
Whatever can be swept under the rug gets swept under the rug. And if people don't stand up and stop it, it continues to happen. So unless the public gets mad enough that we all show up in Springfield one day and demand answers for these 166 missing children in a peaceful way, until we make a change, no one's going to listen.
I think the legislators perceive it as that the general public doesn't care because foster kids aren't the majority, and most people think that's something for someone else. I'm a good parent, so DCFS would never visit me, even though the statistics say about 30 to 40% of people will have an interaction of some sort with DCFS. Doesn't mean that their kids will be taken, but 30, I had one, so 30 to 40% will have some sort of an interaction. So it does actually affect everyone. Rich, any other questions?
Thank you,
All right.
Bailey.
Hold on. I got one. I'm sure we forgot something. Or what? Answer whatever question you want, or just finish it off. People, give the last push for why people should vote for you.
Sure. Well, guys, the reason you should vote for me is because I'm a real person who cares, and I can't be bought. I can't be told what to do by big corporations or big pharma or anyone else who wants to tell me what to do, because I believe that people have the right to their government, not the government over the people. So I would like to represent my district as a strong fighter who has made it through some crazy situations with nothing but God's grace and his plans for me. And if you guys would allow me to, I would love to serve and figure out what I can do to help this district and bring some money back to your pockets and bring those 166 kids home. There's one thing that even if I don't win this election, I just won't be able to sleep okay until we found those kids, because they could be sitting every night wondering if anybody's even looking for them. And before I started asking questions, nobody was. So
Right.
sorry, I don't mean to get emotional, but that's it for me, guys. It's the kids.
All
We
right,
got to
thank
stop
you.
traumatizing our next generation.
Thank you for being here.